Cognitive Theories of Bilingualism and the Curriculum. Critical Topic Response by Kelsey Gaskins. This is from Chapter 8. Evolution behind underlying proficiency. Early theories developed around the idea that the two languages acquired by a bilingual individual operated independently of one another, as you can see in this picture here. However, with time, these theories have greatly evolved. Current cognitive theories explore the interrelatedness between language, thinking, and the curriculum, which can be seen here in this picture. Common underlying proficiency, also known as CUP. The iceberg analogy was created to develop a visual representation and better understanding of Cummings' CUP theory. As described by Baker in this analogy, two distinctly separate icebergs are seen above the water's surface. However, if you take a closer look beneath the surface of the water, the two separate peaks are actually connected and share a common base. In applying this analogy to Cummings' theory, each peak of the iceberg above the water's surface represents a different language, each separate and unique. Yet beneath the surface, the construction of the two peaks from a common base signifies that an individual's two languages are developed from and operate within the same central processing system. The thresholds theory. Expanding on the foundation that multiple languages use the same central processing system, the thresholds theory suggested that thinking from the ownership of two languages could produce positive, neutral, and negative effects. The research behind the thresholds theory may be best understood when the theory is viewed as being composed of two thresholds. The first threshold indicates the level that must be reached in order for a child to avoid the negative effects of bilingualism. However, until the first threshold has been reached, the child at this level have low levels of competence in both languages and are likely to experience negative cognitive effects of bilingualism. Once the first threshold has been reached, there are unlikely to be positive or negative consequences. In addition to the neutral cognitive effects associated by reaching the first threshold, these children should have age-appropriate competence in one but not two languages. Lastly, the second threshold indicates the level that must be reached in order for a child to receive the positive effects of bilingualism. Baker explained that at this level, children have age-appropriate competence in both languages and thus are likely to experience positive cognitive effects. Furthermore, children that have reached the second threshold are called balanced bilinguals. Linguistic developmental interdependence hypothesis. Cummings' research with the thresholds theory directed his focus towards the correlation between the two languages of a bilingual, establishing the framework in support of his linguistic developmental interdependence hypothesis. Cummings' new hypothesis suggested that competence of a second language is partly dependent on the level of competence already achieved in the child's first language. Baker further explained that the more developed the first language, the easier it will be to develop a second language. Continued studies on language competence brought to light a significant developmental divide between surface fluency and academic fluency, which requires more advanced language skills. Cummings identified these fluency categories as basic interpersonal communicative skills, BICS, and cognitive academic language proficiency, CALP. The developmental divide identified between social and academic fluency was supported by research, which found that English oral proficiency takes 3 to 5 years to develop, while academic English proficiency can take 4 to 7 years. Originally designed to extend the instructional implication of academic fluency in the areas of cognitive, academic, and language, Baker introduces the basic concept behind this new 2-dimension, 4-quadrant instructional tool. As previously mentioned, this instructional tool is composed of 2 dimensions. The first dimension of this new tool focuses on the amount of contextual support available to the student, which can be classified into 2 separate quadrants as either context-embedded communication or context-reduced communication. While the second dimension of this tool focuses on the amount of cognitive demands required in communication, which again can be separated into 2 different quadrants, classified as either cognitively demanding communication or cognitively undemanding communication. The creation of this 2-dimension, 4-quadrant instructional tool proved to be an even more valuable resource once its many uses were highlighted by Baker, including a guide for instructional planning, curriculum task assessment, to produce an appropriate teaching strategy, differentiation, analyzing classroom assessments, and much more. Curriculum relevance. In connection to the curriculum, Baker explained how Cummings' ideas are important because they relate directly to creating instructional and learning environments that maximize the language and literacy development of socially marginalized students. 2 years later, and this information is coming from the article that I chose to support Chapter 8, this study was conducted in which the research investigated how teachers support emergent bilingual pupils' academic language development with a focus on the language of literature, and how teachers can design pedagogies that effectively support language learning for emergent bilingual pupils. And what they ultimately concluded was that the implementation of a pedagogy across schools that fosters the development of both linguistic and literacy competence must also build on the cultural and linguistic capital of bilingual learners. My reflection. After reading about the theories and strategies that Baker acknowledged in Chapter 8, I realized that it was in a pretty controlled environment, and I was curious to see if there were any other factors that could be brought into the mix that would influence his results. Specifically, I would be interested to know what role socioeconomic status could play in the results that he obtained through his studies. Obviously, this is a concern to me because I'm teaching in an area that has a high poverty rate, continuously high poverty rate. And over the last several years, my school district has experienced a swiftly expanding Hispanic student population, which is increasing the number of English language learners that we have enrolled in our schools. Effects of socioeconomic status. I took it a step farther, found another article, and did a little research because I was curious myself to see what the results could possibly be. Okay. And in this article that was published in 2004, they provided data on the outcome of including socioeconomic status into these theories that were mentioned in Chapter 8 and the strategies as well. And they found that bilinguals with relatively little verbal ability and low socioeconomic status were able to do as well as their monolingual counterparts. All right, and all of this brings me to the conclusion. I'm going to share with you guys a few quotes that I thought really helped wrap up this whole chapter. Understanding and thinking will be affected by the contextual support that exists and the degree of cognitive demands in a task. Successful cognitive operations in the classroom will depend on matching curriculum task with language competences. And understanding current cognitive theories of bilingualism provides a teacher with the necessary knowledge on the interrelatedness between language, thinking, and the curriculum, enabling them to better accommodate the English language learning students in their classrooms. And here are several of the resources that I used to create this presentation. Thank you.